Hi, so I have been studying the relationship based theory, and I really wanted to do this presentation over it because I've done a lot of research in how it affects infants in early childhood and toddlers, as well as like the hospital where I work at. For example, I've noticed that a lot of times the nurses will take a very relationship based approach with their patients, and I've noticed that it does wonders compared to nurses that might take a more like scientific or like matter of fact route, and I've just noticed that patients really thrive through that. So I wanted to study it more in infants and toddlers. So basically, the relationship based theory is very important for infants and toddlers because when they are first born, they're learning to like love, and they're learning how to make secure attachments with their caregivers and teachers. And in all reality, they see their parents a lot, but they see their teachers just as much, if not more, depending on their parents' professions. So those teachers and daycare assistants, all those people working, are so important to them. And if they're not forming relationships, that's a solid 50% of the day that these kids aren't forming those secure bonds and connections. So that's why I think this theory is just so important, and it should be like a foundation for everything. One of the very big strengths that I've noticed for this theory is that when a relationship is founded between a kid and a caregiver or a teacher, you can learn so much more about a child per se. Like, they tell you what they like in the different ways they can like learn best, or say they just really love like the Trolls movie, you can then incorporate that movie into stuff you want to help teach them. Or I know in my particular experience, I've worked at daycares where I take this relationship I've built with these kids and learn that every single kid in my classroom loves animated Disney movies. So I incorporate that into, if we have a good lunchtime, then we watch Disney movies afterwards. Just little stuff like that is such a big strength to this theory that it can be easily overlooked, but those little facts are so important to know about your kids. A weakness of this theory is definitely the fact or the idea that our society is set up where people are constantly moving and constantly going grades up and, getting older. So when they form these bonds with their teachers and daycare assistants, they end up moving and they lose that secure connection, which is a weakness in the fact that it does take a little bit of turmoil through this kid to get used to like not having that connection anymore. But if it's done the right way, it can teach kids and infants and toddlers a lot about forming bonds with someone and then having to leave them. So while it's a weakness, it really can be a big teaching moment if it's done the right way. Play is supported very heavily by this theory. I kind of talked on it earlier, but a lot of relationship based with infants and toddlers especially comes through playing with them and making them feel comfortable and listened to and loved. And so play is one of the first ways that you'll notice toddlers especially and infants really reach out and start to form connections. Like when I walked into my lab at Head Start for the first time, I immediately went and played with a couple infants, and that's how we like started forming our relationship. So I've really seen how that's supported in this theory, because you play with someone and then you gain that relationship, and then you can start to teach and to discipline if needed because you've started that with a strong base. I just kind of answered it, but evidence that I've observed in my classroom is basically a lot of the kids, I notice them playing with the teachers, and then they start off the day, they're, not having as many behavior issues because they're not as tired and cranky yet. And by the time they start having issues, they've gotten in that good relationship building play. Now, if they need to be disciplined, they have this trust with the teacher that she likes to play with me. She has my interest. I will listen to her if she needs me to, for the most part. I really want to integrate this theory into my career as an occupational therapist, in that I want to form such specific relationships with my clients where I know so much about them and I know what they do, from start to finish with their days, because as a therapist, I will be helping them do those things like brushing their teeth or sitting at the lunch table. And I need to form a relationship with my clients to know, like, I mean, if they don't like sitting at tables with their whole family for every meal, then that's not social interaction might not be something we work at. Like, it's so important to form that relationship and get to know these things so that I can integrate teaching them what they need to be taught in their therapy. That is all I have for the relationship-based theory presentation. Thank you very much.